Back here on the Big Ten Huddle, use the link for home field in the description. Great way to support the show. If you're going to shop there anyway, just go ahead and use the link. It helps us out. We appreciate it. All right, Zach. So a message board poster. I mean, you can tell it's the off season because we're talking about big, huge message board posters at this point. Message board genius put it out there, so it's not anything paid for. They put it out there, so it's free at this point. So I don't feel bad talking about it. But essentially, this message board poster over at Ute Zone, a Utah message board on 24/7, talked about how in a month Utah is going to go to the Big Ten. I have my notes here. I'm going to read off my notes and then I'll turn it over to you for your reactions, Zach. Utah struggles in the Big 12 with clashes over media, scheduling, and NIL is what they reported. They also talked about how Utah allegedly is close to a Big Ten invite, passing compliance in the AAU audits. Apparently, there is also Fox and NBC. They back Utah due to their Salt Lake City connections and a strong media market. Then Big Ten officials visited Utah in March. They said as well, and then Utah's new indoor facility meets the Big Ten standard. I mean, a lot of little stuff in here. There were also some contradictions. We can get to those as well. But essentially, what they're saying here is that Utah has everything they need to make their way over into the Big Ten. I'm not buying it. I think there were too many contradictions in this. Sometimes I think message boards can get it right, and then there's other times where it looks like somebody is just looking for some attention here, in my opinion. So Zach, you feel the same way. What are your thoughts?
I like this comment from Philip. I don't want to play against Cam Rising in the same year he gets his first Social Security check.
That's true.
So I think there's a lot. I've changed my tune on this a little bit because I think when I first heard it a year ago that Utah could be a candidate, I was like, no, that's dumb.
We did a video on it a year ago.
We did, yeah. And I was like,
and all the Utah fans found it and they got very mad at us.
Yeah. So. But looking back, and I think there are some good points. Like Salt Lake City is a growing market. It's a good market. It is a good bridge from the Pac-12 teams that came over to the Big Ten. Like there's a lot. And Utah has been a very good program under Kyle Whittingham, which I think there is a lot to love about Utah. Here's the thing. Everybody wants out of the Big 12 to get to the Big Ten or the SEC.
Exactly.
Like, and if the Big Ten isn't offering an invite to Florida State or Clemson, they're not offering an invite to Utah.
Like, well, and also like it talks about the academic stuff here in the post, and it's like, yes, a group can be AAU, but that does not mean they typically have the research capacity of other programs like in Ohio State, UCLA, Michigan. I mean, all of these Big Ten teams have huge like research facilities, do a whole lot of stuff. Like, it's not just AAU. There's a whole lot more that goes into it in that as well. So, and some people say that does matter. Some people say it doesn't matter. I think at the end of the day, it does matter. The Big Ten still wants to be a conference that is prestigious in their academics and their research and everything else. So I think it does matter. But as far as I'm concerned, like this is just somebody wanting conference realignment drama again. And right now, there's not really been any. But at the end of the day, really all the conference realignment drama, in my opinion, hinges on Notre Dame. That's the team everybody should be talking about. Yeah. If Notre Dame decides to get into a scheduling agreement with the Big Ten, which is actually very possible because of NBC and the deal they have with them, and NBC has a deal with the Big Ten right now as well. Like, all of that stuff could work out. But if you're talking about taking a team from the Big 12, it's not Utah. Like, yes, they have a good market there with Salt Lake City and everything, but they're still only barely top 40 in viewership in college football. Like, I get it's a big media market, but it's not like how they went and they got Rutgers for New York. It's not like how they went and got Maryland for their media market over there with Baltimore and DC and everything else. Like, Salt Lake City is a very good market. Don't get me wrong, but it's not New York. It's not Washington, D.C. I don't think I'm delivering a hot take saying that.
Yeah. Well, and it goes back. By the way, I've changed my tune on Notre Dame too. I don't think they're ever joining a conference until the power conferences make them. Like
Which I do
I used
think
to,
the USC stuff is participating in that. We made a video on that not too long
yeah,
ago too. Like,
yeah. But it's I thought it would come earlier when USC and UCLA joined the Big Ten, and I was wrong about that. Um, the thing we've talked a lot about realignment. We talked a lot about realignment a year ago, and I think the thing that I continue to rack my head around is like the Big Ten only moves when it's going to change the landscape. This doesn't like I think Utah is a fine program. Don't get me wrong, but it doesn't change the landscape, right? Like Rutgers and Maryland, as much as people want to laugh at it, it changed the landscape because it gave the Big Ten the Eastern Seaboard and the two of the biggest media. It's how the Big Ten essentially got the money they needed and the stability,
right?
Because at the time those are the biggest media markets you could go after.
Right.
And then USC and UCLA literally changed the game because it made them a full national conference. And it gave them another blue blood. And then you get Oregon, who is like a new school, a new blood, who has a ton of money, and Washington, which is no slouch in terms of their media market in the long run.
And Washington's a much better football program than people give them credit for. I mean, like their history and everything else too. Like, I mean, we've talked about it. Washington just needs a coach to remain consistent there. Peterson was, but outside of him, like they've had coaches come and go too often. That's kind of been their issue more than anything.
Yeah. Sorry, and by the way, I was going to say, by the way, Washington might be a dark horse to win the conference this year.
I think 10-win ceiling. I don't know if they're going to win the conference. That offensive line, it still gives me too much concern.
That's the big question mark for sure. Yeah. But
they have the stars to do it. They have the star players.
Yeah.
Williams, Coleman, Boston, guys on the defensive side too. Yeah, they have the stars to do it. So anyway, that's not the segment.
Well, I was just going to say that anyway. Utah. This is not to denigrate Utah. Like I think Utah. If tomorrow we found out that they joined the Big Ten, I don't know if I would feel good or bad about it. I'd just like, okay.
I would feel bad about it because there's another team in Utah I would rather have.
BYU.
Yeah. Give me a religious school that has people of that religion all across the country in love with that university because they either went there or had family that went there. Like, that's what you're talking about with a national brand, right? Like you're talking, it's the religion aspect of it all. And you and I, we're both religious, like we get that. But there's something different about BYU and that school and how it is basically the biggest Mormon school out there. And anybody who's big in that church, and I'm not trying to get on a church rant here. I'm just talking about the entire thing of it all. Like they owe some kind of family lineage or something like that to BYU. So you're looking at that as much more of a national brand, in my opinion, than Utah. Like, yeah, Utah's had some good seasons and Kyle Whittingham, but you see what BYU is doing in basketball right now? Like,
yeah.
They are paying out the wazoo to try and get guys to come to their program like crazy because they want to be successful in athletics. And then also too, like they have a whole bunch of people who went there, graduated there, went off outside of Utah, and now they're national, all out there with everybody else. So in my opinion, if I was going to go for a school in Utah, I'm looking at BYU before I'm looking at Utah themselves.
They aren't an AAU institution, but they're an R1 research institution, which is still prestigious.
Well, and that's the thing too. Like Nebraska's not an AAU right now. They were when they joined, but they're not right now. So
yeah.
How much does AAU matter? Like,
yeah. Either way, I wouldn't be as bent out of shape maybe as you would be. I
wouldn't have been out of shape. I just would rather have BYU. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I'd rather have neither. Like, and that's, and I think that's my point is like, I wouldn't be, I wouldn't be upset, and I wouldn't be like, that's stupid, because I see the appeal, but it's not earth shattering. And I'm just like, I don't know, like, I don't know what it does for the Big Ten. And I'll keep saying it. The Big Ten is not going to add teams just to add them. Like,
Right.
it's got to benefit the conference. And no offense to Utah, Utah's not big enough to benefit the conference more at this point.
The only way the Big Ten would add Utah is if it was an SMU to the ACC situation, where Utah says, we'll come and don't pay us anything. That's the only
Yeah.
way it would happen, which
Yeah.
I don't think Utah's going to do that.
They might if
they don't have oil money like SMU has.
Yeah. The only way they would is if A, they're financially stable enough to be able to do that for a while, and B, because they know the Big 12 is temporary.
Right.
Which yeah. I think everybody knows that the Big 12 is not going to last. But
no, I mean, I do think the Big 12 though is making some good moves and understanding that they are not the premier conference, but they're doing everything they can to try and keep like pseudo premier programs in their conference and trying to just not be group of five. Like I think sometimes the AAC is like, we're still big dogs, and it's like, no, you're not. You know, like the Big 12, it seems like they're kind of like, yeah, we know we're not big dogs. We're just trying not to be group of five. So whatever we can do to stay away from that, like that's what we're gonna do. Just keep us power four. That's all we care about, which I think is the right move.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Pitt Snipe Husker says seems like Clemson has fallen off the planet with regards to realignment. I think that's because of the new ACC agreement. Look for like 2029, 2030 when you're going to see Clemson, Florida State, Miami, schools like that, because essentially a buyout to get out of the ACC is regressing by year. So that's the biggest thing with the ACC right now is Florida State got what they wanted, but not right away. So it's not called a buyout, but the grant of rights or whatever to get out of the conference, that is regressing each year, and it sounds like that's going to be more possible in like 2029, 2030. And there's also talk about like, what if the Big Ten helps pay for Florida State and Miami to get out of and I'm just naming random schools, I'm not saying them in particular. What if they helped them pay their grant of rights to get out to join the Big Ten type of deal? So I don't know. We'll see. Last question here. Philip asked an interesting question, and then we can be done. Zach, what schools would even be considered to join? I guess you could answer this yourself personally. Which ones do you consider, or which one do you think would even be considered in the country to join, Zach? I mean, Notre Dame has to be on there.
I've felt the two schools that make the most sense, one of them will not feel like it at first. Notre Dame and Stanford. You preserve rivalries. It's another West Coast school. You get the big fish in Notre Dame.
Do they want another West Coast school, though? It seems like USC doesn't want that.
Well, USC may not want it, but I don't, no offense, I don't really care what one school wants.
Okay, but what does Stanford add? What does Stanford
add
from an athletics like viewership perspective? I get academics, totally there. Yes.
Yeah, Stanford, I think actually it's to secure Notre Dame.
Okay.
Because you add another natural rival now in conference.
Okay, I can see where you're going with that. But at the same time, I mean, does Notre Dame play Stanford every year? Does Notre Dame play Stanford every year?
They did for a while. I forget.
I don't think they do anymore, but I think you're right, they did for a while.
Yeah.
Larry's saying Stanford adds market as well. I'm sure they would. Yeah.
Northern California, which is
totally would.
Yeah.
It's a great point there by Larry. I like John's point. It says they bring Andrew Luck and Frank Reich to the table. Yes, let's bring him in.
Yeah.
My Colts fandom here is begging. Gosh. Actually, probably not for Frank Reich. It didn't go so well with him.
So, okay, Notre Dame and Stanford have played every year except for COVID from 1997 to now. And before that, And actually, they've played every year since 1988, except for 2 years in 95 and 96.
I must say I'm not enough of a Notre Dame fanatic because I did not realize that. So I apologize, Notre Dame people out there. My bad. No, I do think though at this point, whoever you can bring in with Notre Dame to get them into the conference, because to me, Notre Dame coming into the Big Ten would just solidify the Big Ten as no doubt the best conference
Yep.
out there. Right now, the Big Ten and the SEC are kind of teetering back and forth year to year, I feel like. But if you get Notre Dame, I don't think there's any question. You have too much consistency with top tier programs to not be considered the best conference. Are you the deepest conference? No, probably not. But are you the best conference? Yeah. And we know that because the best conference was never decided by deepest, when the Big Ten was the deepest conference. But as far as I'm concerned, yeah, I know, right? They don't like to hear that. But as far as I'm concerned, like, you do whatever you have to do. If that means bringing in Utah with Notre Dame, bring them in to get Notre Dame. If that means bringing Stanford in with Notre Dame, heck, if that means bringing in SMU with Notre Dame, I don't care. Bring them in. Let me ask you this really fast, and then we can be done. Schools that have been rumored to come to the Big Ten ever since the schools transitioned their way over: Florida State, Texas A&M, Utah. I don't think I'm missing anybody. I mean, like Miami, North Carolina, stuff like that.
UNC.
Yeah. Which one would you personally like? Don't think about viewership or anything like that. Just you personally, which one would you want the most to come with Notre Dame? Utah, Texas A&M, North Carolina, Florida State, Miami, that kind of stuff.
Is it bad that I'm just going to say Stanford, which I know they haven't been? Because nobody else moves the needle though for me. Like Texas A&M doesn't make sense. Like I get you get the Texas market, but like why?
Yeah.
I don't.
I want to just so we can steal a team from the SEC.
But do you want to steal Texas A&M?
I mean, if it makes the SEC mad, yes.
But that they might just infuriate us just because.
Yeah.
They're like an SEC wannabe. That's the thing. Like they weren't in the SEC, now they're in the SEC. Yeah, and we're like, true. We're awesome. It's like, guys, you guys haven't done anything since you got to the SEC. Like what? Yeah. You're like the Miami of the SEC right now.
Okay, well, who's your team then? If you don't want Texas A&M, it's Stanford.
It'd probably be Stanford.
Okay, you want to know what mine is? Hot take here.
Texas A&M.
No, I mean to steal from the SEC. Yes, that would be my primary reason. But outside of that, Georgia Tech.
Yeah, you were on that Georgia Tech train a year ago.
I want Georgia Tech so bad. I think Georgia Tech, they get Big Ten money and they invest in their football program. They start taking down Georgia with some of their recruiting, bringing in and Georgia already doesn't own the state of Georgia, but they do well enough with certain players. You put Georgia Tech in there as a Big Ten team, have them start going up against Georgia in the conference with some more NIL and stuff like that. I would love that.
Yeah.
I would love that.
Yeah. Doug's dropping some knowledge here. And this is why until the powers that be force it, Notre Dame's not joining a conference because they get the full payout from the playoff.
Well, they get that, and their athletic director gets to do all the meetings just like a what's it called? A conference commissioner does. Like you got Tony Petitti, Greg Sankey, and Notre Dame athletic director in all these meetings. Like why would you not stay out of a conference? You would immediately lose that ability to go to all these things and preach and pride for your school. Like yeah. So I make complete sense for Notre Dame to stay outside of the conference. The only way they're going to get Notre Dame to go to a conference is if teams start strong-arming them and say, we're not going to play you at a conference. You have to join our conference to play us.
Yeah. Penn State guy just asked, so what happens to the Big 12 teams? They all join SEC or Big 10? Ultimately, I feel like we keep saying this. It's going to go into like a minor league system where you have two conferences and you have a champion.
I don't think it'll they'll create a new bowl system. Like I don't think we'll get like FBS 1, FBS 2. I think it's just going to naturally happen where you get the playoffs are primarily dominated by Big Ten and SEC. just the way it is, and Big 12 teams kind of just feed into the Big Ten and the SEC. Like it's just
Yeah.
going to kind of become a feeder system a little bit. Same thing with ACC. Same thing with Group of Five. Yeah. So
Yeah. Sorry, this might be the last question of the night.
this is a good question. Go ahead, read it.
Opposite question: if the Big Ten got cutthroat and kicked programs out, who would it be?
Purdue.
And
You
maybe
already have two teams
Northwestern.
in Indiana.
I was gonna say, and probably Northwestern too.
Yeah. Purdue, Northwestern, because you already have two teams in Illinois. I mean, Northwestern does have. Do they have academics like on their side? Maybe, but Purdue. I mean, Purdue does too. So it's not like. Yeah, I think if you're just strictly talking like sports, though, you're looking at the teams that are two in the same state. It's nothing against Purdue. It's nothing against Northwestern. It's just you have two teams in Illinois and Indiana. You could also possibly look at, I don't know, maybe like an Iowa. I don't think the media market there is anything spectacular. I mean, it's good, obviously. Like, you want that in your conference, but if they're looking to kick teams out,
Is Philip?
I'm curious what Larry would say. Larry, who would you kick out?
Yeah, Philip asked a question. Why keep Rutgers? And I know the immediate media market, but is there a sense? And I'm not for this, by the way. My love for Jersey and Rutgers and our guy Larry Crane.
We can't kick out Rutgers. We lose Larry. Yeah, we can't.
We
got two great Larrys right now, both on the East Coast. We can't lose either.
Yes. She reminds me, I need to reach out to Larry about getting him on for a Rutgers recap of the year. So that I need to do that. I've been slacking. So
it's all right.
Yeah. Larry agrees with us. Oh darn. Larry agrees with us.
Yeah. Most obvious terms, redundant states and markets. Yeah. Totally agree, Larry. So nothing personal. Purdue and Northwestern. It just is what it is. Kinetic says he'd trade Rutgers for Syracuse.
You made a pitch for Syracuse too. I remember. You're Syracuse very passionate.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I still think we're going to get to contracts. I still think teams are going to sign contracts with conferences at some points. At some point, I don't think we'll get to the point of trading. But I don't think Connecticut's like saying that. I think he's just saying like trade Rutgers for Syracuse, but could happen. Contracts could happen.